in the effects department because he didn't get enough location, and it meant you had to sit at your bench and make soppy models, which was a lot of the guys thought they preferred to be on something where you could go out and do big pyrotechnic sequences. Weirdly, Remembrance is one that they all queued up to do, as you can probably see. So one day I just got told, oh, are you interested in science fiction? We've got an episode of Doctor Who we'd like you to do. We need this big space station and a TARDIS model. And it was like, oh, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And then I think I went home and phoned my mum and go, you won't believe this, I've just been put on Doctor Who.
And you, I mean, you were a fan, but you became, later on, you became even more involved with the series, didn't you? You became as deeply embedded as you could have, really.
Yeah, JNT, the producer, eventually realised, sort of during, I think it must have been Sylvester's second series, that the stuff that I was building, hang on, that's sort of got a reference back to something that's done before. Specifically, I built a prop for Silver Nemesis, which was a Cyberman story, and it had this sort of Cyberman console. And John came up to me and went, oh, it looks a bit similar to something that we had with Peter Davison. And I went, I know. And he went, you know a lot more about this show than you're letting on, don't you? And yes, I do. But by that point, John had realised that actually, if I was a fan, it wasn't getting in the way of me doing my job. And so John decided he was going to utilise that knowledge and that enthusiasm. And so he asked if I could be allocated to all the remaining shows in his run. And one of the sad things for me is that at the point that the series was taken off the air, John had indicated that the following year myself and Alan Marshall and Paul McGuinness, three of us who come up through the ranks of the effects department, he was going to ask for us to design the next series, which would have been Sylvester's last series. And then we never got to do it, or so I thought.
And tell us a little about the difference in those days to the special effects now. I mean, when you were working, they just brought in some of those primitive video effects, Quantel and stuff like that was sort of coming in more. Did that affect your working policies?
Yeah, I mean, it was fairly obvious that computers were going to come in, and shows like Babylon 5 had proved that you could do computer graphics on a television budget. So it was only a matter of time before that technology was going to filter down through into the BBC. The first story of Sylvester's era, Time in Rani, there's a big sequence at the beginning of that with the TARDIS being zapped by energy bolts. Now, we were sort of halfway through the construction of that as a model sequence to be shot on film when we were told, oh, you're not doing that anymore, the computer guys are doing it. And that really was the sort of first inkling that what was going to happen is that the computer industry was going to storm into the effects side of television. And it's ironic in some ways that just as that technology that could have given the show much more scope was coming into the realms of being something we could do on our budget, that's when the show got taken off the air. And you only need to look at what happened 2004-05 onwards to see, the impact that computer graphics has had.
But when that happened, did that sort of, was the challenge then that you thought, well, I've got to learn this technology, I've got to be part of this technology as well?
There was a push for the special effects department to take this technology on, but at the time the BBC was split down that you had the special effects department and you had the video effects department, the likes of Dave Chapman and Dave Jervis. And ultimately it was decided that it was that side of the BBC that would take that side of effects on, which I think was a mistake. I think that was a point that they should have actually merged those two disciplines into one unit, but instead we were told, no, you're not going to actually take on this technology. And in many ways I think that's the way it's carried on till today. I mean, there isn't one effects company that works on Doctor Who. There are a multitude of effects companies, and all the disciplines have been split down into everyone's individual specialisation. And I think that's the big difference between Doctor Who Classic and Doctor Who New, is that then the BBC effects department handled everything. Costume, props, monsters, guns, prosthetics, pyros, smoke, dry ice. I mean, if you look at a show like The Curse of Fenric, the effects crew did everything on that. I mean, there's an overlap with the costume and the makeup department, but you were expected to do everything. Similarly on Remembrance, it's not one guy's looking after the Daleks and somebody else doing the pyros. It's the same team of people. It's about 6 guys who are expected to do the lot. Whereas now you've got up to 6 companies doing it, you know, their own individual bit.
Can you see the benefit of both ways, or do you prefer one method?
There's a benefit to the production in that you get somebody who's working in an area that they're specialised in. So Doctor Who as it stands now, you've got Neil Gorton and a fantastic team who are completely set up for doing prosthetics and creatures, and they do a tremendous job. And they don't have to worry about doing smoke on location. That's Danny Hargreaves. And from my point of view, I can concentrate on building the models and doing my bit of it. So I think there is a benefit. The downside of it is that you don't have quite as much integration with the rest of the production. I mean, when we were doing Doctor Who and we would go on location, you know, we'd all be staying in the same hotel, probably down Dorset, Lulworth Cove. So shows like Curse of Fenric and Survival, you're mixing with the crew on a daily basis, and it means that you get to know everybody, and it's very social. The shows that I've done recently on the new series, I've not met Matt Smith. I've done 2 shows for him now, and I've not actually met him. Chris Eccleston I only met once on set, and that was the day I was doing Dalek. So it's a completely different setup, it's a completely different way of making television.